all the poor and powerless, and all who are lost and lonely. All the thieves will come confess and know that you are holy, and know that you are holy. And all will sing out hallelujah, and we will cry out hallelujah. All the hearts who are content, and all who feel unworthy, and all who hurt with nothing left, will know that you are holy, and we will sing out hallelujah, we will cry out hallelujah. And shout it, go on and scream it from the mountains, go on and tell it to the masses that He is God. So shout it, go on and scream it from the mountains, go on and tell it to the masses that He is God. So shout it, go on and scream it to the mountains, go on and tell it to the masses that He is God. And we will sing out hallelujah, and we will cry out hallelujah, and we will sing out hallelujah, and shout. So shout it, go on and scream it to the mountains, go on and tell it to the masses that He is God.
Well, good evening, church. Josh and I wanted to go in conjunction with Sundays and what we're doing with Songs of the Church and talk on Wednesdays about some other songs that have deep scriptural connections, but also have some sort of a personal connection in our own lives. And so I get to start this week off with my absolute favorite worship song of all time. It's a relatively newer song in that, it's not in a hymnal or anything yet, but I do believe that it will be in a hymnal at some point because it's one of those songs that is it's going to stand the test of time, at least in my opinion. And so a little known fact about me, obviously I have a degree in education, I am a teacher, but I also have a degree in intercultural studies, which is kind of like, having a degree in global missions. And that is something that I have a heart for, global missions. And, I think as Christ followers, we really all kind of need to have a heart for global missions because our God is a global God. And we see that from the beginning of the Bible, Genesis, all the way through Revelation. So right in Genesis 1, after God creates Adam and Eve, he tells them to be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and govern it. And so right away we see this command to fill the earth, to go to all the world. And, as you know, in Genesis 3, we have the fall, sin enters the world gets really bad. By Genesis 6, we see Noah and his family kind of rise up as the only righteous people of the time. And so in Genesis chapter 7, we have the flood and kind of this global reset, where God kind of starts over with Noah and his family. And then by the time, chapter 8 comes, the flood is receding. And so we just had the flood and a global reset. And then in Genesis chapter 11, we have the Tower of Babel, or Babel, if that's how you pronounce it. And the Tower of Babel, when you think about that, most people just think automatically of the tower itself, right? The story, you think of the tower that they were trying to build to reach the heavens and kind of elevate themselves above the place of God. But also within that story, in verse 2, it says, as the people migrated to the east, they found a plain in the land of Babylonia and settled there. So you see right there, people acting in total disobedience to the purpose of God. God wanting the world to be global, to fill the earth, and they choose to settle. And so after that, in verse 8, it says, after, God confuses them by giving them all different languages and now they can't understand each other, it says, in that way, the Lord scattered them all over the world and they stopped building the city. So we see God accomplishing his purpose. He scatters them and their languages now separate them. And so from this point really on, as we go through the rest of scripture, it's God drawing the nations back to himself through the nation of Israel, through his chosen people. And we see that God is a global God. When Jesus comes, he gives the command, the Great Commission, Matthew 28, 19 and 20, go and make disciples of every nation, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Every nation. Go and teach them to obey all I've commanded, and I'll be with you until the end of the age. Jesus also says in Matthew chapter 24, verse 14, he says, and the good news about the kingdom will be preached throughout the whole world so that all nations will hear it, and then the end will come. And so thinking now, how close are we to that point where all the nations have heard? Well, according to the Joshua Project, which is a really great resource for looking at the unreached people groups that we have in our world today, there are still in the world today 7,402 unreached people groups. Now, it might be a people group that, for example, if they originated in India but had moved, like a section of them had moved to some place in Europe or something, they're counted as two unreached groups because obviously if you were to reach the group that is now isolated in Europe, it wouldn't necessarily have an impact on the people group that they came from in India. And so they're counted a little bit differently, like if you across multiple countries, but 7,402 unreached people group. That's 42.5% of all people groups in the world right now are still unreached. With that global command to go to all nations, we still have almost half of the world to reach. And so it's kind of mind-blowing, right? There's still so much work to be done in this world for global missions. And so the story that I wanted to share kind of connects a little bit to that, and sort of the Tower of Babel a little bit. When I was in Lebanon for the first time in 2012, we went with a group from my church, the Wesleyan Church of Hamburg at the time. And we also went with a church from Portland, Oregon, an English-speaking church from Portland, Oregon, a Spanish-speaking church from Portland, Oregon, a Korean church from South Korea, so obviously they spoke Korean, and then we worked with the local Lebanese church while we were there as well. And so with the 50 or 60 of us that kind of traveled and did ministry together throughout the Beirut area, there were 5 different languages happening at the same time. So we had English, Spanish, Korean, And then we also had Arabic and French, because in Lebanon, pretty much if you make it, through the traditional schooling, you're going to end up fluent in English, Arabic, and in French. So 5 different languages happening at the same time, which is kind of cool, because it's like, what an awesome picture of like the church coming together, and of all different languages and whatever. But also it was a little frustrating sometimes, because we couldn't even always communicate with each other, and here we are trying to do ministry to other people that we couldn't always communicate with because of language barriers. And so you see how that Tower of Babel really, it was kind of a far-reaching punishment that sort of exists today, because we can't just share Jesus freely, because we don't have the language sometimes to do that. And so, there's just a lot of work that we still have to do, to learn languages, to have Bibles printed in languages, and to share that out. But anyway, so when we were there, on Sundays, we wanted to have church services. And so we had translators for the messages, but then for the songs, what we would do is we would all pick a song in our own language, and then it would be phonetically represented in each of the other languages, so that we could all sing it together in one language. So like when we picked our English song, it would be phonetically represented in every other language, but then everyone would be able to sing it in English. And so we picked, for one song that we did, the song, "How Great Is Our God." And it was then phonetically represented up on the screen in all 4 of the other languages. As we started to sing, though, the Korean church, some of the people from the Korean church, they realized that they knew this song in their own language. And as they started singing it in Korean, the other language groups started singing it in their own language as well. And so we had one song being sung in 5 different languages, all at the exact same time. So "How Great Is Our God" was being sung in English, Arabic, French, Spanish, and Korean. And I remember just stopping and listening and thinking, oh my gosh, like this has to be a little glimpse of heaven, right? Like heaven on earth. So in Revelation 7, verse 9, it says, "After this I saw a vast crowd, too great to count, from every nation and tribe and people and language, standing in front of the throne and before the Lamb. They were clothed in white robes and held palm branches in their hands, and they were shouting with a great roar, 'Salvation comes from our God, who sits on the throne, and from the Lamb.'" And so every time I hear this song still, every time I sing this song, it gives me goosebumps, because it reminds me of that moment where we had all of those different languages coming together, all of those different people groups from different countries, all together singing to the one true God. And it's that little glimpse into the future of the time when every nation, when all the rest of those 7,402 unreached people groups will know the one true God and will sing his praises together someday in heaven. And how amazing that will be, right? And so I just wanted to share that story and this song with you, "How Great Is Our God." And I just hope that it's an encouragement to you as we think about, the work we still have to do as the church. If you're interested in looking at some of those unreached people groups, the Joshua Project has an unreached people group every single day that they can send out to you through their app, that you can be in prayer for, that God would send workers and people to go out and share his news the good news with them, and to also send people who are able to translate the Bible and share that with the people groups that still don't even have a Bible in their language. But also that it would just be an encouragement to you that a day is coming when every tribe, every nation, every tongue will all together worship our great God.
Splendor of the King, clothed in majesty, let all the earth rejoice, all the earth rejoice, 'cause he wraps himself in light, and darkness tries to hide, and trembles at his voice, trembles at his voice. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God, and all will see how age to age he stands, and time is in his hands, beginning and the end, beginning and the end. The Godhead three in one, Father, Spirit, Son, the Lion and the Lamb, the Lion and the Lamb. How great is our God! Sing with me, how great is our God! And all will see how great is our God. Because he's the name above all names. You are worthy of all praise. And my heart will sing, how great is our God. 'Cause he's the name above all names. You are worthy of all praise. And my heart will sing, how great is our God. And how great is our God. Sing with me, how great is our God. And all will see how great is our God. Water you turn into wine, and open the eyes of the blind. There's no one like you, none like you. Into the darkness you shine, and out of the ashes we rise. There's no one like you, none like you. 'Cause our God is greater, our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God. Into the darkness you shine, and out of the ashes we rise. There's no one like you, none like you. 'Cause our God is greater, our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God. And if our God is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what could stand against? And if our God is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what could stand against? Then what could stand against? God, you are higher